if we're implementing real lean solutions in QA, next question I guess is, well, what kind of things are we going to do? So I've tried to summarize those here. So the kind of processes we're going to be addressing, certainly if it's a manufacturing site that we're working on, clearly the release process is going to be a prominent one. So what are the main elements in improving a release process? Well, the first one is optimizing the batch record itself. Now, obviously, if you have implemented electronic batch records, as many people have, this is not quite so relevant, but a great many organizations still operate off either entirely paper records or partially paper records. So optimizing the batch record, reducing errors in the batch record is a fundamental part of improving a release process. The second item, which we'll talk about more in detail later on also, is continuous incremental review. So I will elaborate on that in a moment. The third item is visual queuing systems. So using visual queuing systems in the same way as you would in a QC lab or you would sometimes do in manufacturing to guide the activities of the QA function, very important. And surprise, surprise, leveling in general is a very important part of improving a release process. Probably the second biggest, or maybe even the biggest sometimes, process within a QA function on a manufacturing site is what I would call change control. When I say change control, I'm talking about the big process, end to end, including validation, including Kappa, the lot. So improving that process, which is something we'll talk a little bit about later on, is very, very common in real lean projects in QA. Now, other common areas, probably the two next most common ones, are the use of graphic work instructions and the rationalization of standard operating procedures, very, very common element. And finally, the streamlining of internal auditing processes. Okay. Now, having said that, of course, there are lots of other smaller processes that one could level, that one could implement real lean in. And just for example, BSM is currently very active in the RA area, in the regulatory affairs area, helping people to level processes like labeling processes, like submission processes. So you can level lots of processes in QA, but for today, I'm going to primarily focus on the top two, they being the release process and the change control process.